excited to be here with all of you today and talk to you about multi-agency deployment approaches for state and local government customers. This is the agenda for today's session. We will start the session with a brief overview of Microsoft Purview. Then we will discuss the approach for implementing Purview workloads for different government agencies and also talk about various stakeholders that should be involved in Purview projects. We will also show you a sample labeling taxonomy and sample Purview use cases for government customers. And then finally, we will discuss about the best practices for implementing various Purview workloads. By now, several of you in this community must be already familiar with Microsoft Purview. For those who aren't, I will quickly provide an overview of Microsoft Purview. Microsoft Purview is a unified platform that can help you automatically discover sensitive data, secure and govern your data, and also manage risks and compliance of data end to end. Purview can also significantly contribute to your generative AI readiness journey. Microsoft Purview provides comprehensive data security solutions that can be used by your IT and cybersecurity teams. And these solutions can also discover sensitive content and also protect your data. Then we also have data governance solutions that can be used by your data officers and data engineers. And then they can understand the data map, the data catalog, and get insights on your non-Microsoft 365 structured as well as unstructured data. Then Purview also provides comprehensive risk and compliance management solutions that can be used by your records team or your compliance and legal teams. With data lifecycle management, you can retain content that is important for your organization, and you can delete stale content that is no longer required, which ultimately enhances the quality of your data and also helps you in your generative AI readiness. Then we also have records management capabilities that are in place so that you can automate your retention schedule and manage the records right inside of Microsoft 365. With e-discovery and audit solutions, you can streamline the process of responding to public records requests, to litigation requests, and also forensic investigations. With e-discovery and audit, you can also discover prompts and responses from enterprise generative AI apps like Microsoft 365 Copilot. Then insider risk management solutions will help you proactively identify and mitigate insider risks within your organization. With communication compliance policies, you can proactively identify and mitigate any communication related violations. You can identify and mitigate non-compliant or unethical use of enterprise generative AI within your organization. Then finally, with this compliance manager, you can automate compliance management for more than 300 industry regulations like HIPAA, NIST 853, IRS 1075, CGIS, and much more. Very soon, our government customers will also get the NIST AI Risk Management Framework or NIST AI RMF template that can help understand and manage various AI-related risks. Now, identifying your champions and the virtual team with all the right stakeholders is extremely crucial for Purview implementation and adoption. In fact, several roles within the organization might have the shared responsibility of protecting and governing the data. And it's not solely the responsibility of the CISO. In fact, data security, governance, risk, and compliance management is like a team sport, and it is a continuous journey. Now, some of the roles in your V team could be the CISO, then there could be Chief Privacy Officer, Chief Data Officer, risk and compliance managers, IT managers, and then your legal counsel and records managers can also be important stakeholders, especially when it comes to e-discovery projects or data governance and records management projects. When it comes to state and local government customers, there's a unique challenge that we are seeing. There's a single Microsoft 365 tenant for the entire county or the city, and this tenant is typically managed by the central IT team. And then there are these individual agencies that use this tenant, but they do not have the administrative access to the central tenant. Each of these agencies have their own unique information protection and governance needs. The central IT team typically does not have the bandwidth to granularly manage the purview policies for each of these agencies. So government customers ask me, how do we deploy all these various purview policies to all the different agencies? Well, to address the multi-agency challenge in SLG, we have a solution called admin units. Admin units provides granular role-based access control such that the IT administrators from each of these agencies can get access to Microsoft Purview portal and they can manage their own Purview policies. This empowers the agencies to manage their own risk and compliance management, and it relieves the administrative overhead from the central IT team. So in this example, you can see that Department of Health IT admin can manage the information protection policies for users only in the DOH department. Or the DOH records manager can only create records management policies for users within their own agency. And these departmental admins cannot see the policies created by other agencies. However, your central IT team or global admins can continue to manage purview policies for all the agencies. Admin Units functionality is already available for GCC tenants for various Microsoft Purview solutions like Activity Explorer, data loss prevention, sensitivity labeling, audit, data lifecycle management, as well as to records management. Admin units will soon come to insider risk management as well as communication compliance policies in the GCC tenant. When I talk to state and local government customers, more than 90% of them feel that their data is dark. That means nobody knows what type of sensitive information exists and where it exists. So knowing your data is the first step towards building an effective data security strategy. Once you know your data, you can then classify and protect data wherever it lives or wherever it travels across various devices, apps, and services. This classification and protection may include applying content markings on emails and documents, applying encryption on data, or even restricting the access to the data. Then you may want to create data loss prevention policies in order to prevent oversharing of sensitive content. Then customers also want to govern the life cycle of the data. For example, you may want to archive your data, manage the retention and deletion of your content, and so on. So customers ask me, should we do the protection DLP governance in a serial order as shown on the screen? Well, knowing your data can be the first step. However, you can start your data protection, your DLP and data governance projects in parallel. The advantage of classifying your data and implementing sensitivity labels or retention labels first is that you can leverage all those sensitivity labels in your DLP policies or in your insider risk management and communication compliance policies that provides you holistic data protection. Here are some of the key questions that organizations can get started with for knowing their data. Do we know what type of sensitive content exists within our organization and where it exists? Do we already have a data classification framework? And how are we classifying the data currently? Well, if there is no formal data classification strategy, then you can get started by creating one by involving various stakeholders. This is the workflow for knowing your data. So as a starting point, work with stakeholders to discuss what regulations or security frameworks you want to comply with. And based on this, you can describe the categories of sensitive information that you want to protect. Then using Microsoft Purview solutions, you can automatically discover and classify sensitive data. You can then view sensitive content in Microsoft 365 as well as get insights of sensitive content in various databases and also non-Microsoft 365 unstructured data sources like, let's say, Azure Files, AWS S3, and so on. Some of the key stakeholders in this process will be your security team, your compliance officer, your chief privacy officer. Then your IT teams, your Microsoft 365 admins, global admins can be supporting roles to help you identify sensitive content through the Microsoft Purview portal. This is a snapshot of Content Explorer in Microsoft Purview portal, and it can automatically show you the content that matches more than 300 out-of-the-box sensitive information types. These are based on pattern-based matching. So example, you can see content matching social security numbers, credit card numbers, bank account numbers, and so on. We also provide more than 70 artificial intelligence based trainable classifiers that will help you identify the type of content, like say health related content or tax information, financial information, legal agreements, and so on. With Activity Explorer, you can see the activities that are taking place on sensitive content and how sensitive content is moving across the organization. You can see activities like sensitivity labels that are being applied on the content, sensitivity labels modified or removed from the content. You can also see sensitive files that were copied to clipboard, copied to cloud, or if there were any DLP rule matches and so on. This also shows specific locations from where these activities took place, like activities taking place from your endpoints, from your on-prem file shares, and so on. Your departmental admins can be provided with access to only see the activity events on the sensitive info of users within their administrative units. So example, if I am a Department of Health Information Protection admin, I can see activities taking place on sensitive content for users only from the DOH department. So you can see the scope drop down here that targets me to a specific admin unit that has been defined. The know your data stage can be implemented using a crawl, walk, and run phase. In the crawl stage, your stakeholders can first review the long list of out-of-the-box classifiers provided by Microsoft, and then you can select the classifiers that make sense for your agencies. It's important to document and agree to the sensitive data that is important for your agency or for your organization. So example, social security numbers, credit card numbers might make sense for government agencies, but something like a UAE identification number or a New Zealand driver's license might not make sense for state and local government customers. Then once you identify the sensitive content, you can review the insights from Microsoft Purview Content and Activity Explorer to identify where your sensitive data exists. And you can see how your sensitive data is being handled. Then if you feel out of the box classifiers are not meeting your needs, then in the walk phase, you can create your own custom sensitive information types to detect the content that is unique for your organization. And in this walk phase, you may also want to identify sensitive data that is in connected third-party SaaS apps as well. Then in the run phase, you can use the classifiers to scan sensitive data that resides in your on-prem file shares by setting up a MIP scanner. You can also build exact data match classifiers to look up specific sensitive information instead of any generic or all sensitive information. Example, instead of identifying all random social security numbers, I may just want to identify social security numbers of my employees or of patients by looking up a patient record database or an employee record database. Then you can also build custom trainable classifiers that are AI and machine learning based models that can identify specific type of sensitive content. Again, all these custom classifiers and out-of-the-box classifiers can be leveraged then to protect your data and prevent any data loss. Now, here are some useful links on this page that can help you get started with knowing your data. We will be sharing this presentation with you so you can access these links. If you are a unified customer, then you can leverage various workshops that can help you activate Purview data classification and help you know your data. These workshops are delivered by cloud solution architects and also come with labs with pre-built instructions. Barry will be talking a little bit more about these workshops at the end of the session. All right. Now, once you know your data, the next step is to start protecting data across various government agencies. Again, here are some of the key questions that can help you kickstart your data security strategy. What are the different sensitive data that we are trying to protect, right? Do we know the classification levels of these data? How are we currently protecting the sensitive information? And also, what kind of access level or encryption do we want on different types of sensitive data? So this is a sample workflow for protecting your data. The first step is to define the sensitivity labels in the Microsoft Purview portal. Then you can define the conditions for which you want to automatically apply sensitivity labels and protect the content in your Microsoft 365 locations. Then you can also start creating policies in Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps to extend the sensitivity labels and protection to content in third-party SaaS apps as well. Then you can apply sensitivity labels to content in your on-prem file shares with the help of a MIP scanner. And you can also use Purview data map to apply labels to schematized assets, like for example, content in Azure, or label content in Azure file shares or AWS S3, apply labels to Azure SQL database columns, and so on. Let's take a look at the stakeholders here. Your security, compliance, and privacy team can be the key roles during this workflow. And then your IT admins, Microsoft 365 admins, legal and HR teams can also contribute significantly when it comes to data classification and labeling taxonomy. Several SLG customers ask me, what type of sensitivity labels should we create when it comes to multiple agencies or for the entire organization? Well, this is a sample labeling structure that you can reuse or modify as per your organization's needs. And this labeling structure is somewhat similar to what we have implemented at Microsoft as well. Sensitivity labels can be created based on the confidentiality of the content. So example here, you can see I have created labels like public, general, confidential, or highly confidential. Public means it's the content that is okay for public consumption. And then general means it could be general internal transactions within the agencies, but it's not open to public. Then, of course, confidential and highly confidential are self-explanatory. Then these are the parent labels. You can create sub-labels within the parent labels to allow the content to have a specific scope. So for example, let's say highly confidential content, but it can be accessed by internal as well as external trusted vendors. Then there could be highly confidential content, but it is accessible only to internal only users. Then highly confidential documents or content that is specific to an agency, like let's say Department of Health or Department of Transport. Then you can have highly confidential content that is available only to the recipients of the email or recipients of the specific documents. Okay. And then once you publish these labels, your users can start applying them to emails as well as to documents. You can also extend these labels to containers like Microsoft 365, SharePoint sites, and Teams and team sites, Microsoft 365 groups, and so on. When you're creating your label taxonomy, it is also important to define permissions on the content when the label is applied. So example, when a user applies label to a content, you may want to decide whether the content recipient should be able to remove the label or change the sensitivity label. Should the recipient be able to print the content, copy the content? And if it's an email, should the recipient be able to forward that mail, reply to that mail, and so on? And these settings can then be incorporated when you're creating the labels in Microsoft Purview Compliance Portal. Also, creating label automation rule sample can also help you understand what labels should be automatically applied when sensitive content is found. So in this example, you can see that when social security numbers, passport numbers, and other PII information are found, this organization automatically applies the confidential Contoso extended label. Also, when any keys, passwords, or tokens or credentials are found in any of the files or emails, then a highly confidential internal only label is applied to the content. Here are some of the sample sensitivity labeling best practices that organizations can follow. When you're creating a labeling taxonomy, consider what threats you're trying to prevent and not what users will be doing with the content. And always keep your end user experience in mind, because these are the people who will be doing the labeling, and also they will be dealing with the labeled data. Next, creating label names with the degree of confidentiality of the content works best for your end users. So example, let the content be classified as confidential, highly confidential, maybe public, general, or top secret, and so on, instead of giving project names or other names to the labels. Also, labels should be carefully planned and defined, assuming that they will last for a long time. These labels often become part of the company's culture, so it's very critical that they are not frequently changed. And then the labeling order also has to be carefully planned. Use the parent labels to highlight the confidentiality of the content, and then use the sub-labels to scope out like protection settings for the content. Then try to keep your labeling structure simple and not have more than 5 parent labels and more than 5 sub-labels under each parent label. So we call this as a 5x5 rule, because having more than that many number of labels can cause administrative overhead, and it might also end up confusing your end users. Then get your labeling taxonomy and structure thoroughly reviewed by various stakeholders like your legal teams, HR and compliance teams, your privacy officers, chief data officers, etc. Because remember that defining sensitivity labels is not just an IT related task. It affects everybody in the organization. Then using administrative units functionality, your agencies can deploy and manage labels specific to their own agencies. So here you can see there is a global label policy which publishes specific generic labels to all the users in the organization. At the same time, there are policies that can be published by individual agencies so that they have specific labels for people within the agency as well. So there's a labeling policy for DOH department as well as Department of Transport. Now let's see how individual agencies or the organizations can implement information protection in the crawl, walk, and run phases. In the crawl stage, you can define your label taxonomy and rights management that will be applied to the content. You can follow the example that I showed you in one of the slides previously. Then you can get the stakeholder buy-in and engage with your end users to support future rollout to your users. If you have multiple agencies, then it is important to establish business owners and governance framework for labeling taxonomy for each of those agencies. It is also very important to define roles and responsibilities for operational teams and then mapping them to the role groups within Microsoft Purview. This will ensure that people have just enough access to manage their data. And then once you define the sensitivity labels, you can run a proof of concept with limited users to evaluate manual labeling as well as auto labeling experiences. Then in the walk phase, you can implement a pilot to larger set of users or maybe roll it out to a small agency. And you can extend the labeling and protection to third-party SaaS apps to content in your on-prem file shares as well. And in this phase, it's also important to review feedback from the pilots and make any required changes to the label taxonomy or policy design. Because it's in this stage that we can make changes. Once you do the production rollout, it becomes challenging to make changes to these labels. You can also build end user awareness and communication material before doing the full production rollout. Then finally, in the run stage, you can deploy labels to all users or all agencies within the organization. And also continuous end user education and communication plan can be helpful during the organization-wide rollout. Here are some useful links and resources that can help you learn more about sensitivity labeling. Again, we also have unified workshops to help you activate sensitivity labels within your organization. Now I'm going to hand the session over to Sergio, who will talk about how you can deploy other Microsoft Purview workloads to your multiple agencies. So Sergio, over to you.
Thank you, Bibi. Well, hey there, SLG community, and those of you who will be watching this recording on YouTube. I'm one of your guest speakers, Sergio Salinas, and I am thrilled to discuss Purview deployments and best practices. So whether you're a seasoned cybersecurity pro or just looking to learn a little bit more about how Purview can help you protect data, there's something for everyone in today's session. So let's start with talking about securing your data. Here are some of the key questions that can help you launch your data loss prevention program. How does your organization prevent data loss? What measures do you have in place that manages the egress of your sensitive data? What data prevention policies do you have in place that can prevent, data overshare? So no matter where you're at, perhaps you're looking to offboard from a current DLP tool, or you're looking to onboard to another tool, and you're not quite sure what parity would look like when moving to a new platform. Or perhaps you're looking to start a new DLP project and you're looking to kind of help gain some coverage, and you need to know how to define those policies. Well, let's unpack this a little bit more and look at some of our common use cases. So first, we want to you may be looking at your DLP to help gain visibility of your sensitive data. Organizations need to understand how data flows within their enterprise. DLP provides visibility into data usage, the storage, and movement across devices and networks. Another use case might be, preventing data leakage via endpoints, or preventing the data leak from off of your M365 platform, or on-premise environments, or different cloud repositories. So DLP is that tool that's going to help you safeguard PII information or other sensitive data that belongs to your organization. So compliance with regulations like CGIS or NIST frameworks are a key driver for agencies to implement DLP. Another one might be to protect your sensitive content when shared internally or externally. With the amount of data shared every day from email and different cloud repositories, it's important that your DLP solution can apply access controls for both internal and external users. Next, you want to control the sharing of information from devices to or not sanctioned applications. So a device mitigation with endpoint DLP or Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, these are tools that can help prevent sensitive data from being shared to an unapproved repository like someone's personal Dropbox or personal box. And then finally, controlling how users access sensitive data. Identifying management via access reviews can help you minimize access to data, as well as identity protection with your MFA, which is necessary for adopting that zero trust posture. So when creating DLP policies, always consider the end user, because they're the people who are going to be receiving these block prompts when a policy violation occurs. So if they believe that the action should be allowed, then perhaps a DLP policy can be set to allow for an override with a justification so that a user can proceed with the action. Allowing for an override, especially early on, can help drive adoption of the DLP security. So there's got to be that balance between security and productivity, at least as we start looking at those crawl, walk, and run phases. And next, DLP policies, they need to determine what type of prompt is needed. Do you want to block the exfiltration of sensitive data to unapproved locations with a soft block? That soft block being something that allows for an override? Or do you want to do a complete hard block that prevents the option to continue? So these are important when you're defining your DLP policies. Also, DLP policies can be scoped to protect different workloads across your M365 locations. So Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, Teams, OneDrive, and endpoints. So each policy can contain multiple rules that can allow for an admin to define conditions as well as those actions based on the organization's policy. So as you start working with DLP, you do have options to turn it on. The rules, you can turn them on immediately, or you could run them in a simulation mode. Now, when creating your DLP policies, consider which teams should be involved. This is a best practice. Teams can help you define what data is sensitive, which repositories should be allowed, which repositories should be blocked. And this insight is going to be essential for your planning. Another best practice is, to have a good understanding of your sensitive data and how it's managed across your organization. So things like your PII, financial records, having the ability to classify it based on its sensitivity, all these things are key. But remember that Microsoft Purview provides customers with over 300 sensitive information types that can be used, they can be modified to meet your needs. So all that plays a critical role when you're starting your sensitivity classification. Next, define your DLP goals. Establish your objectives for data loss prevention, whether for compliance and regulatory reasons, or you just want to align your organization's security goals. Define those goals is important as you're getting these things started. Next, simplify your DLP approach. Focus on key areas such as specific platforms. Prioritize the sensitivity of this information. And then, use tools like Content Explorer to help you locate where sensitive data resides. And finally, your journey needs to define what is sensitive data. Where does it exist? How to protect it with DLP policies. Build and test these DLP policies. And then once you gain some confidence, consider advancing to a more robust policy that's tailored towards your production environment. When we look at our crawl, walk, run phases, these are those strategic approaches for implementation. In our crawl phase, form your team to identify data protection needs, comply with regulations, categorize sensitive information, map the organization's current and desired state, identify data flows, set policy actions based on user risk, handle policy violations, upskill teams on some of their DLP solutioning, and run some proof of concepts. In your walk phase, pilot your DLP, test it against various platforms. Start with your testing, enable user policy tips, refine those policies, and establish operational processes for business exceptions. In your run phase, roll out the pilot DLP policies, across the organization, and apply those to your fleet, but continually evaluate and refine the policies as needed. Here are some more technical resources that will be shared. And next, let's talk about governing your data. Here are some of the key questions that can help you launch your data lifecycle management program. Does your organization have a retention policy? Do you have any regulatory or compliance policies you need to adhere to? And how do you manage your data today? Setting up retention policies are great for retaining the data you need, as well as removing the data you don't need. When we look at some of the common use cases, we want to ensure that all documents and messages are retained and deleted in line with the compliance requirements that are set. Organizations, they may align to a specific regulation that requires the retention of data for a specific amount of time, as well as that removal. So, for example, you may have a policy for certain financial records to be retained for a year, or various employees and business records to be retained for 3 years, or tax-related documents to be retained for 7 years. Whatever it may be, you want to make sure that you have the tools in place to retain that data. Next, automate the life cycle of employee data from joining to leaving a business. So whether an agency needs to retain data, then delete data as one workflow, or to retain data and then schedule the disposition of the removal of that data, automation is key for managing your data lifecycle at scale. So next, you want to require certain data to be made immutable in line with specific requirements. And here we can see government agencies, they maintain immutable public records such as birth certificates, land deeds, court judgments. These records are crucial for historical accuracy, legal rights, transparency. And in the legal industry, organizations must preserve records relative to ongoing litigation or investigations. So these records are in place. They can be in place under a legal hold, ensuring that they remain immutable until the legal matter is resolved. Next, one of the use cases might be you must be able to provide proof of permanent deletion or the disposition of the record. So for state local agencies, this might mean disposing of permanent records, providing evidence of compliance. This might include the destruction of certificates, transfer of documentation, or other forms of proof. For the private sector, this might mean when records are deleted, and they'll need to maintain audit trails or logs showing the process, approvals, and final dispositions. And finally, the ability to easily migrate from an existing file plan that currently governs your organization's data. So, again, whether you're migrating from an existing file plan and starting a new records management journey in Microsoft Purview for the first time, Purview does allow you to import retention labels from a file plan. And here you can bulk create these labels by importing relevant information from a spreadsheet. And when creating data retention policies to govern your data, it's essential to involve key stakeholders to ensure the comprehensive coverage is successful. So we want to bring in our administration and records management. These teams handle the day-to-day operations relative to data retention. They understand the organization's data landscape and can provide the practical insights needed. We also want to include our legal teams. They play a crucial role in defining the policy's legal requirements, and they provide insights into the industry-specific regulations. Also, our compliance and security teams. These are the teams that are going to be responsible for implementing and enforcing the policy. So they need to align with how data is stored, how it's backed up, how it's removed. And then finally, including your business units and data owners. So when we look at best practices for retention, we want to understand the type of data the organization handles and identify sensitive information and regulatory requirements. We want to develop retention policies based on legal, compliance, and business needs, and specify how long to retain data. Next, applying retention labels in Microsoft 365 to manage content retention consistently across various workloads. So that's where our retention labels can really come in and help us manage this at scale. We also want to configure retention settings to retain, delete, and you even have the option to retain then delete content as needed. So again, automation is key. Next, you want to regularly review and adjust your retention policies to align with organizational needs and monitor their effectiveness. It's important that we educate employees on retention labels and the importance of that compliance. So publishing them where an end user can also make the choice to manually apply a label is also important. And finally, encourage the collaboration between legal and IT teams. I know working with a lot of customers, sometimes there can be siloed environments and it's not always easy to bring people in together. But we really need to understand that collectively we're on this journey together, and by working together, it's going to help us find our path to completion. When we look at our crawl, walk, run phase, again, it's a strategic approach to implementing your data governance. In our crawl phase, this will involve establishing cross-organizational working groups to define data retention and the destruction policies, engaging communications for teams as well as future phases, then identifying relevant laws, regulations, determining the needs and retention and deletion across various data types. And this also includes upskilling operational teams on data lifecycle and records management within Microsoft Purview. So defining roles and responsibilities and the planning of the proof of concept for evaluating is important in this crawl phase. Next, when we look at that walk phase, here we are looking to pilot, run some of these retention policies set up some retention labels and event-based retention labels. So the impact of these policies and labels and to continually evaluate them, gain those insights by using things like Activity and Content Explorer. This way you can see how retention labels are being applied across your pilot users. And then in your run phase, this phase sees the execution of the end user's communication plan. And this phased rollout of pilots to all your users and the continual evaluation and refinement of those retention policies and labels. This is what's going to help us meet the organizational needs. Okay, so let's switch gears. Let's talk about compliance management and how Microsoft Purview can help your organization comply with regulations. Here are some of the key questions that can help you define if your agency can benefit from running a regulatory assessment against your environment. So, do you know the list of regulations your agency has to comply with? How are you tracking the compliance posture? How do you keep up to date with the frequent regulatory changes or new regulations? So, using tools like Compliance Manager can help you perform assessments. This will quickly inform agencies on how well they are aligned to a specific regulation. This will help provide step-by-step improvement actions on what actions need to be performed in order to be compliant. This can help take the mystery out of regulatory controls by providing a path that can help your compliance teams implement change control. So what are some of the common use cases? Well, managing compliance risk assessments through a single tool, Compliance Manager fits that need. We also have role-based access controls that can allow for collaboration between compliance teams, risk assessors, auditors. And with each improvement action, organizations can store evidence such as documentation and screenshots, as well as notes. And this documentation supports that audit trail and can help with your compliance reporting. Another use case might be, get step-by-step improvement actions on implementation controls for your regulations. So these actions help organizations centralize compliance activities in a structured approach. And each action provides detailed guidance on how implementation records and implementation controls are gathered. Next, we might automate testing for several improvement actions. And so here, many improvement actions include automatic testing and monitoring. Compliance Manager can detect relevant settings within your M365 environment and multi-cloud environment. And then finally, Compliance Manager can collaborate with Microsoft Secure Score to automatically test certain improvement actions, and successful implementation will help you earn maximum points for your compliance. You also want to automatically track compliance posture for various regulations and assessments. So Compliance Manager can help you in this area as well. And finally, collaborate with IT, compliance, and risk teams through an integrated workflow, which can offer several advantages. So here, teams can gain shared insights by working together. There's efficient communication and improved risk management, as well as unified reporting, automated workflows, and a consistent policy enforcement. In the crawl, walk, run phase, this can also be used with your Compliance Manager. In your crawl phase, this is that initial step where your organization forms the work group to identify the compliance requirements and then maps out the roles with Microsoft Purview. The focus is on understanding the current compliance posture and identifying actions to implement the compliance score, to improve the compliance score. In our walk phase, you want to test compliance management processes with a pilot, streamline task assignments, and prepare for a full rollout of developing user awareness materials and communication plan. And then finally, in the run phase, here's where you will expand your compliance management beyond 365 services, customize your assessment templates, and establish alert policies for proactive monitoring of compliance events. Now, you may be asking the question, this information is great, but how can we get started on our Purview journey? Well, we are going to be sharing some resources that we want to share with our SLG community to help them understand more about, knowing their data, protecting their data, securing their data, and governing their data. So what we want to share with the community is how they can look at it in a spreadsheet where use cases can be defined, where they can look at some potential gaps in coverage that they want to close, as well as to help customers list out more use cases that are relevant to their environment. If you look at the top right, you'll see this common theme of know your data, protect your data, prevent data loss, and govern your data. This aligns with the 5 tabs at the bottom, starting with the first, know your data, protect, secure, and govern. So here, if you look at the use cases of knowing your data, this will define objectives that you're looking to accomplish, links of resources, the ability to discover using Content Explorer, or maybe you want to discover sensitive data using IP Scanner. Maybe you want to identify the sensitive information types or the label classifier type. For example, if I look at this first row, I can see we're looking to discover sensitive data using Content Explorer, using the credit card sensitive information type. This is out of box for Microsoft, and I'm going to target SharePoint. Here, the actions taken and the expected results are a use case as well as an actual result, so somebody can come test this, leave comments, and start applying that knowing your data skill set. Next, we move to the protect your data. Here, we're looking at information protection. So you'll see the same common theme, objective, links. Here, companies and organizations can apply label names, see which label policy those labels are published to, whether or not they're using auto-labeling policies, testing the conditions. Are they looking to manually apply a label? Or maybe like here at the bottom, they're looking to auto-label. Again, looking at the label methods, if you're going to be using a browser, which platform you're targeting, and then with your use case, the activities defined, expected results, you can pass or fail whether it's working or whether it's not. And this will help you start using this know, protect, secure, govern approach that we recommend to our customers. Looking at our secure data, this is our DLP. Objectives, links. Here you can define DLP policies. You can target the repositories you're looking to protect. You can define actions, whether it's a block or a soft block with the justification. What are those conditions you're looking to monitor for? How is the data transferring? Is it going through the web or using a browser? And then some of these storage locations like Dropbox, OneDrive, SharePoint. So you can look at the activities defined, expected results, give it a grade, leave some comments. And this is aligning to particular licensing. So you may see that something that's with an E5, maybe it's got some endpoint devices for the DLP. So we're trying to show customers that even if they're using E3, how to start identifying gaps in coverage and closing them. And then finally, looking at our govern your data. Here we're looking at data lifecycle management. Again, with our objective links, you can define your retention labels, whether or not you're using a retention policy or auto-labeling policy. Again, testing conditions with the ability to manually apply or automatically in your use case scenario. So I will just briefly show you what it may look like if you were to run one of these evaluations yourself. We'll be sharing the links so that you can download this. This is the know. You can see where I've done some testing, verified my actual results. My protect data, here you can see the name of my labels. You can see the label policy I'm publishing them on. You can see whether or not I'm using some auto labeling policies. All of these align with specific use cases, activities defined, expected results, and here you could pass or fail. Same thing with DLP. You can see my DLP policies. You can see which repositories I am protecting, what actions, actual results, and then the same thing with our governed data for data lifecycle management. Now, this last tab I didn't mention, but if you want to click on it and you've been working on improving your security posture, you can refresh the data and you can see the pivot tables tell you, what's not started, what's passed. And you can use this as a method to talking with your, if you're on a unified contract or if you're working with Microsoft's Fast Track or one of our partners. So I will pause there. And Barry.
All right, Sergio, thank you so much. Really great job, Sergio and Bibi. So I'm going to close on a couple of slides here to end us off for the day and make a couple of announcements, including our next session, which I think is going to be on the 27th of June. We always do it on a Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific. So we have some assistance for you. We have a proof of concept that we can do. We will have to coordinate with you if you are expecting any sort of co-funding with one of our top global partners for Purview. We also have a trial. So for X number of days, we can work with you on a trial. That is also an option for you. And we have something relatively new called compliance as a service. So think about one of our Purview partners that build their services and consulting, if you will, on the Purview platform. Think of them providing a service for you utilizing our tools. And we also have Fast Track. So M365 Fast Track, these are merely licenses that we talked about today within M365. So our Fast Track team can help you onboard those tools. And if you are a unified support customer, where there are a number of workshops that Bibi kind of showed through some of the slides. And if you have any questions about, workshops, unified support, or any of this, we certainly invite you to contact us at the link that you see there, msslgcompliance@microsoft.com, and we will route that to the appropriate contact and either schedule a meeting, respond to you, whatever you need. Next slide, please. And these are some resources, and these resources aren't generic to Purview. These are specific to the content that we shared with you today. And again, we will share this deck with you. And this recording will be sent to our YouTube channel, where we post all of the recordings for all of these sessions for probably the last close to 2 years. Okay, next slide. And also, this is our SLG community. Hopefully, all of you or close to all of you are members, but if you are not or have others in your organization or peers that want to join, really all it is we provide some periodic announcements. We hope to do more in the community, add more value to you, but you will also get the invites to these monthly webinars. The last thing I wanted to do is let you know that on the 27th of June, our next topic is going to be protecting your and defending on your non-M365 data sources. So historically, we've talked about licenses within Purview that provide, data security, compliance, risk aversion, covering all those things. But we also have a version of Purview that used to be called Azure Purview that helps you for that structured or unstructured data for your non-M365 data sources. We will cover that on our next session. Okay, so I am going to quickly stop the recording and take us off. Please feel free to come off mute and